Hello, noble ones, and welcome to Metatron's Academy. Not too long ago, I actually made an interesting video, which was this one here. Is English just badly pronounced French? So how French is English? And it was a reaction to a very popular language channel within the linguistic community, and that was asking this question, how French is English? But he made another video about it. In fact, it's this one here, how Germanic is English. Rob words, by the way. Now, in the future, I'm considering making my own videos, and I will analyze it in a slightly different manner to how he does it usually. But for today, I actually wanted to utilize this opportunity to react to some of the video and provide my own opinions, and then this way direct you to content that I believe to be valid, at least in the language space, and at the same time make sure that you watch him. So what I do whenever I do a react video as a personal way, I never react to the whole thing. So I'll be skipping around in order to give people an opportunity to kind of check this as a demo, if you will, see if you like it, and then if you do, please go and watch the entire video in the original channel.
This is the Germanic language family tree, and look, there's English. English has Germanic blood pulsing through its veins, and yet most of the words in our language are not Germanic. What's going on there then? How Germanic is English really? Let's find out in another Rob Words. So the
Fantastic introduction. Already to that, I would say yes, without any question, English is a Germanic language, but that's not necessarily based on vocabulary alone. Vocabulary is important. It does play a strong role in the branch of linguistic trees of any given language. But in the case of English, what makes it Germanic, apart from the rest of the vocabulary, probably 40%, he'll probably give us the actual numbers. But the structure of the language is clearly Germanic in the conjugation patterns.
first thing we need to do is to establish what we mean by a Germanic language. And to answer that, we need to go back in time, because the vast majority of the languages of Europe, and some Asian languages too, can be traced back to a single ancestral language. A language spoken by a group of people probably living somewhere around the Black Sea, absolutely ages ago, like 5,000 years ago or more. We call that language Proto-Indo-European, which means earliest or original Indo-European, because its speakers would go on to spread across two continents, taking their way of speaking with them. However, as they dispersed over hundreds of years, the way that each disparate group spoke changed, and in differing ways, therefore creating the language families that we have today. For example, in Southern Europe, we have the Romance languages descended from Latin, which in turn is descended from Proto-Indo-European. In Eastern Europe, we have the Slavic languages, which share a common ancestor that's descended from Proto-Indo-European. And in Northern Europe, we have the Germanic languages, all of which share a common ancestor we call Proto-Germanic, which is descended from Proto-Indo-European.
I wonder why we don't say proto-romance, you know?
And in this family is English, as well as Icelandic, Swedish, Dutch, and of course, German.
German, yeah.
Now I say, of course, German, because it has to be there, doesn't it? They're the Germanic languages, aren't they? But we do need to be a bit careful here. It'd be easy to presume, I think, that German is somehow more Germanic than the other Germanic languages, or even the original Germanic language from
Actually, very good point. I never really thought about the nomenclature alone.
which the others, including English, are descended. But it's not. You see, we've got ourselves in a bit of a bind in English, because we've decided to call this country that I'm standing in right now Germany, and the language most commonly spoken here, German.
But they don't, yeah, they call it Deutschland.
Using a word that we got from the Romans. But we also call the shared culture across Northern Europe Germanic.
Yeah.
Making the words German and Germanic very easily confused. Now, for example, in German, no such confusion exists, because though they also call that shared culture Germanic or Germanisch, they refer to their own language not as German, but as Deutsch.
It's interesting. I actually was reviewing a video recently where I believe sometimes, which is interesting because if you think about it in English, the closest thing you have to this is Dutch, which is a completely separate thing. So it does get confusing, doesn't it? That's the difference between an ethnonym and an endonym, something that we have, because of course we have ethnonyms all over the place. And by ethnonym, usually we mean the name of a people or the name of the land. But an endonym is what they call themselves. So Deutsch, Deutschland, and an exonym is what other people call them, so German, Germany, Germans. And yeah, it can get really confusing where you end up using exonyms because you could make connections that are not there. It's normal to use exonyms as well as endonyms, by the way. If you think about it, we do it with Japan, Japanese, while they say Nihon, Nihonjin, right?
Now, ideally, we'd take their lead on this and stop calling Germany Germany, but call it an anglicised version of what the Germans call it. So Dutchland, I suppose. But that would make the language, therefore, Dutch. And then what are we going to call Dutch? We're going to call it Netherlandic? I don't know. It starts to get a bit messy,
Hollish,
doesn't it? Anyway, I'm getting into all of this just to say that because a language is Germanic does not mean it is descended from German. English is not descended from German. Certainly not High German, which is the proper name for the dialect of German that we commonly call just German. However, English is more closely related to German than many of the other Germanic languages because it hangs off the same branch of the Germanic language family tree alongside Dutch and Frisian and some others too. They're called the West Germanic languages.
Man, I never heard Frisian. Have you ever? Do you speak Frisian, in fact? And if not, have you ever heard anyone speak Frisian? Out here, of course, I heard people speaking German, both Low and High German, Dutch, of course, all sorts of Scandinavian languages. In fact, you should say Nordic. If you really want to be all-encompassing, you should say Nordic. Scandinavian, not all Nordic languages are Scandinavian.
And we have this family relation. They're called the West Germanic languages. And we have this family relationship with them because of where English sprung from. You see, before English was in England, it was in continental Europe in the form of a variety of now long dead West Germanic dialects. And these were spoken in the same little bit of Europe from which languages like Dutch and German would also spring. These dialects were then brought over to Britain by the Angles, the Saxons, the Jutes, the Frisians.
I'm making my own video, by the way, on Anglo-Saxons, on the history, on my Metatron channel, and on the language, Anglo-Saxon or Old English, on this channel.
They combined to create a language sometimes called Anglo-Saxon, but more often these days called Old English. This is Old English, and to the modern eye and ear, it's basically gibberish.
I wouldn't call it gibberish, though. Like, I understand what he means. He's not trying to be insulting or anything, so don't take the wrong way. He means it's unintelligible. Still, I find it so charming. I really like Anglo-Saxon, the sound of it. Extremely Germanic, in fact, sounding.
Over 1500 years or so, this is what developed into the English we speak today, and it is irrefutably Germanic.
Yep.
No stray French words in here, the occasional Latin word, sure, because the Romans had not long left the area, but really, Old English is perhaps easier for a modern German speaker to understand than even a modern English speaker. It shares the three grammatical genders that remain in German, and speakers of modern Dutch and even more so Frisian would also have a better chance of comprehending some Old English vocab.
That's fascinating. When it comes to the gender, of course, Romance languages maintain gendered nouns, and Italian, however, does not have neutral, my language, so we don't have neutral. Anything has to be either masculine or feminine. Yeah.
Than someone who only speaks modern English. Old English is a fully signed up, card-carrying member of the West Germanic language family. It's as Germanic as this German forest that I'm standing in. It was written with runes, for goodness sake.
Oh, what has he got? There you go.
For the win. But if our language has changed beyond all recognition...
Hey, let me check his shop. I didn't know he had a shop. He has a sponsor. Yeah, Ground News. Ground News is actually a pretty good sponsor. They have sponsored me a couple of times. There you go. These are the Rob Words shop. Look at that. Word Nerd. This is nice. I mean, yeah. IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA. That's funny. Yeah, it's nice. It's its own shop as well. Wow. Yeah, definitely check him out. I'll put links to his shop, by the way, in the description.
Since then, to the point where we simply can't understand Old English anymore.
Yeah.
Is it possible that English is no longer so Germanic? Well, it's not an unreasonable question. Here is a pie chart showing the origins of all the words in English today. And look, the majority of words are not of Germanic origin. Combined Romance words from Latin and French make up the majority.
Yep.
However, We cannot change English's ancestry any more than you or I can change who our biological grandparents are. I can swan around in a stripy jumper and a Roman helmet, but it doesn't give me Romance DNA. English has Germanic DNA. Once more, despite its French clothing, English still shares a great deal with the other Germanic languages, and more than it does with any other languages anywhere. Sticking with vocab, let's look at the words I'm saying right.
Interesting. So I like that he's going to do now a word-by-word discussion. One thing that I wanted to say, I do believe that the fact that, so if English, for an alternative idea, if English, this could be a video, if English had remained entirely Germanic, so Battle of Hastings, the Normans lose in 1066, the Anglo-Saxon maintain control, there is no, and even, we could even say Claudius, Emperor Claudius decides, you know what, there's no need to go, they can keep their minds, I'm not going to Britannia. So if you remove completely any connection to the Romance sphere and family, whether it be through Latin or whether it be through Old French or Norman French, and if English had stayed fully Germanic, I sincerely do not believe that regardless of its impact, both through the British Empire, through America and pop culture and all the rest, I do not believe it would have become the lingua franca as it has today. Because one of the reasons why English is so common and it just works as a lingua franca, it's precisely because it's an in-between the two greatest language families in Europe, and meaning Romance language and the Germanic language. It's a connecting link. And so it's easy for people who speak Nordic languages, people who speak all sorts of Western Germanic languages, because they can see the connection that there are still a bunch of vocabulary, like 26% is not irrelevant. Words that they can recognize, imagine like hound, Hund in German and all that. Trinken for drink. But then the structure of the language is just familiar to people who speak Germanic language. But because of the massive, almost 60% vocabulary connected either through Latin or through French to the Romance language, then for us Romance speakers it's very easy to pick up because of the fact that we recognize so many words that I only have to hear once and then I will recognize because they are similar to words I have. And this often even happens not only with obvious ones like mentality, mentalita in my language. Of course I can recognize it. But even if you say manual labor, mano is hand. So manual to me, it's easy to remember. Or a manual, you're using your hands to open it. So there are so many connections like that that make it so easy for someone who speaks a Romance language to immediately connect and recognize words. The same thing cannot be said when there is zero connections. Like that's why picking up an Asian language is really difficult if you're not from Asia. And in fact, even if you're from Asia, depending on if it's a language isolate or not, can still be difficult because it's harder to recognize sounds since there is no connection. Sometimes you have to even make up the connections yourself. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.
Now, the ones of Germanic origin are in red, and the ones from French, Latin, and elsewhere are in blue. And you can see that the vast majority of the words we actually use are Germanic, despite them being overall in the minority.
This is true, but it depends on the register. I'm sure he's going to address that, in the sense that if you level up the formality and you start using complicated words, then a lot of these will be blue. A lot of these will be blue. But he's correct. In everyday language, plenty of words will be red, or Germanic origin. And that's a thing.
Why? Because the nuts and bolts of English are Germanic.
Yeah.
It's a bit lol that Germanic itself isn't Germanic. And if we look at basic words, we see how well English fits in with all the other Germanic languages. A is for apple, and that word would be easily recognizable to a speaker of Icelandic, Swedish, Dutch, or any of the others. And then there are the fundamental verbs we use all the time, like to come. Look how similar they all are, although we're the odd ones out because we're the only ones who come with a C. And across English's vocabulary, there's another big signifier that it belongs with the Germanic languages. It bears all the hallmarks of something known as Grimm's Law, named after Jakob Grimm, as in the Brothers Grimm of fairy tale fame. Yes, he was a linguist as well. Grimm's Law.
Could you imagine if English had developed the same alveolar R that is present in High German and French? And I know that you're going to say, but French is a Romance language, right? But that feature is Germanic and they copied it from the Germans. And in fact, medieval French had a rolled R. That was the way it was pronounced back in the day. In fact, all the way. I don't remember exactly when it develops, but it's kind of a late development, the French R, the r. And again, is it pretty much the same sound? When you say Patrick, Raisin, Rodin, Paris, is the same sound as German Warum. Could you imagine if you guys had that? Wouldn't that be interesting?
Says that all the Germanic languages, via their common ancestor, went through a series of consonant shifts that made them different from other Indo-European languages and in consistent ways. P sounds became F sounds, T sounds became Th sounds, Cuz became Huz, Buzz became Puz, etc. And English shows clear signs of having been through this. For example, the P to F shift and T to Th shift are the reasons why our father is the equivalent to Latin pater. And the K...
No, pater though. Come on, man. Come on now. You're better than that.
Our father...
That's pater. Pater in Latin, not pater.
...is the equivalent to Latin pater. And the K to H and D to T shifts are why our heart is equivalent to Greek cardia. Latin and Greek didn't go through these uniquely...
You still say cardiac arrest, though, if you think about it, so that does remain in the technical vocabulary.
...Germanic shifts. However, English did. There are other things about modern English that make it thoroughly Germanic, fascinating things that I'm going to get into in a sec. But
that's the sponsor section. Thank you. What is he saying?
Did you see how President Trump just signed an order designating English as the official language of the United States? A patriotic move or an attack on multiculturalism? What do you reckon? Well, your view may well have been influenced by wherever you heard the news. But with Ground News, who sponsored this video, you get the whole picture.
I do like Ground News. Actually pretty good. I love Ground News. I hope they sponsor me again. All right, let's watch a little more.
Go to ground.news/robwords or use my special QR code to get 40% off unlimited access to Ground News like I have. Okay, let's look at some more of those characteristics of English that make it thoroughly Germanic. One of them is that we don't have a future tense. Have you ever noticed that? We make the future tense using the present tense of other verbs. And guess what? All the other Germanic languages do the same.
Let me say something about that. When it comes to future tense, of course, my language does have it. The fact that a language won't have it is not uncommon. Mandarin technically doesn't have it. Japanese technically doesn't have it. And at the end of the day, it's kind of a redundant feature if you really think about it. You don't really need it. In Italian, we do have it. So if I want to say the verb mangiare or andare, to eat, to go, if I conjugate it in present tense, I would say io mangio and io vado. But if I'm doing the future tense, I will say mangerò, io mangerò, or io andrò. That's how we say it. Do we actually use it though? Well, here's the thing. You don't necessarily need it, because if I say domani, tomorrow, andrò, I will go al supermercato, to the supermarket. Since I've already placed domani, tomorrow, do I really need it? No, you can say domani vado, tomorrow I go. And a lot of Italians do it. Like, we get quite lazy when it comes to the usage of the future tense, in the sense that if someone uses it, it sounds correct, proper, fine. Like if someone tells me in the heat of a conversation, domani andrò al supermercato alle 5. Tomorrow I'll go to the supermarket, or I'm going to the supermarket at 5, since it's kind of organized. It doesn't sound weird to me. It sounds fine. It's okay. But if he told me the same thing with the present tense, domani vado al supermercato alle 5, it's fine. Like, in fact, most Italians will say it that way. Maybe, like, if you are in a teaching context, if you are in a public speech context, that you will hear the future tense a bit more often, and then it's a case by case. And it sometimes is connected to the level of education, but not always. There are people who are extremely educated, but still get a little lazy and just don't use it. So the reality is that the fact that English lacks a proper future tense, meaning a conjugation specifically designed for each verb to represent a future intention, whether it be an intention, a plan, and whatnot, it's not that strange. Would it be cool if English did have a conjugation specific to it? Yeah, that could be interesting. Would people use it? If it ends up happening like in Italy, probably most people wouldn't. All right, let me check kind of the end here so that if you want to watch the whole section where he talks about all the details of all the different words that are similar, you can, of course, refer to the original video. I do want to see what he thinks at the end. Let's go.
Germanic blueprint as well, with modifiers always coming before nouns. For example, man bun, or a skyscraper wouldn't be a skyscraper. It'd be something like a scrape sky, like it is in French, Italian, and Spanish.
He's absolutely right. Grattacielo.
Here's one more Germanic compound for you, newsletter. I have got a completely free one that you should sign up to. It's just wordy, nerdy fun once a week in your email inbox. You should check it out. And I'll see you in whatever you choose to watch next. Maybe this.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate. Very cool video. And guys, if you liked it, as I say, consider this reaction not only as a way to talk, discuss, add commentary, hopefully in a transformative fashion, I believe it was, but also to give you a little demo of a video that I think is good. And if you enjoyed what you saw, then definitely go and check it out, give him a like, and all the rest. Thank you for watching and joining Metatron's Academy. Bye.